I'm climbing the highest mountain on each continent. I'm doing it by human powered. I've been climbing 5 of the 7 summits. The most extreme thing was the earthquake in Nepal in 2015, and I was in base camp on Everest. The earthquake triggered such a big avalanche that I just had to run for my life. Somebody catches my hand and drags me inside. Just start to hug each other like, damn, we made it. East of Indonesia. I remember being in one of those islands. They tell me like, Kepala, Kepala, which means head in Indonesian. They tell me that. They take their machetes, take me to the jungle, and there's 30 human skulls. And so I, I get pretty scared, just like in Papua. So they're just constructing a roof on one of their huts, and I'm asking something, and he turns around, and there's his penis gourd.
Yeah, why are you doing this?
I love adventure. You see the world and it's beautiful, but when you do it by bike or by rowboat or by sailboat or by foot, you feel it. Maybe it's a good idea to have every president or candidate to cross the country on a bicycle, because then they get to know their country better.
Hello, Joe.
Hi, Andy.
How are you? Where are you calling from, Yellow?
From Belgium.
Okay.
In
Okay.
Ghent.
How's the weather in Belgium at the moment?
So. I wouldn't say great. It's kind of more like rainy, cloudy. So yeah, it's not the best, definitely. Yeah, we're all waiting for a nice summer weather. It should be coming this week. Yeah.
And then is it the middle of summer for you guys, or was summer just starting?
It's kind of the middle of summer, but it actually not. Yeah, it's really not working out well. We've had some issues. Yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of places in the world, it's getting a bit more complicated. But for us here, I don't think we should complain, because the rain is good. It makes our soils not too dry. But on the other hand, we've all been waiting for some really nice clear skies for a couple of days, and that's not. It's very unstable. We've had some storms. We've had some some difficult weather. Yeah.
Do you think the weather, is it because of climate change, or do you think it's seasonal, or do you think it's going to consistently be worse and worse each year?
I think it's kind of both. Probably there's I mean, probably, I think most probably there's climate change involved, but it's as well I think it's just a yearly change anyways as well. Like there's the El Nino phenomenon, which is, I don't know if it's still valid to say that, but I know in places in the US that I've been there, they told me that the weather is a bit strange because of that. I think it's still a bit like that here as well. We've actually, at the moment, we're all having a bit colder weather than usual, and wetter. So it's actually not that bad for our nature, for our trees and all that stuff. So that's a good thing. Yeah, it just people complain very fast about the weather, and anyways.
Thank you so much for your time today, Yella.
Yeah, you will.
I first came through you, I think I was going through a period where I finished reading Alexander the Great, sort of his book, and I started getting into adventurers. I was reading about sort of Ranulph Fiennes, and then I started just like reaching out to a bunch of explorers and travelers, and then I think you're one of the people that were on my list, and that's why sort of how I came across you.
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah, what has been the main focus for you over the last 6 months? Well, what was the last expedition you went on? What have you been doing over the last 6 months?
So yeah, the last 6 months, it's actually it's about the last part to get to Denali, the highest mountain of North America, by human power. So I think there I cycled from Seattle, the US, all the way to Alaska in winter. So that was in January, February, and March that I was cycling. About temperatures to -40, so 40 below. Extreme cold temperatures. Yeah, pretty rough climate, to be honest. And I was alone, so it took me a while. It took me a lot of mental effort. It took me yeah, weeks, actually even months to get there. And then finally I got to the base or to the last road, getting to the base of the mountain, where I dropped off my bike and started skiing in with a sled all the way to the base camp of Denali, which took me about 10 days. And then I climbed Denali, the highest mountain of North America.
Wow. And what was the bigger picture mission? Was it sort of climbing the highest mountain in each continent? Was that the mission?
Yeah, I'm climbing the highest mountain on each continent. The big mission in that is that I'm doing it by human powered, so or at least I'm not using an engine to get to the base of those mountains. So it's taking me for actually, yeah, about a week ago. It's my 11th birthday of this project. I'm doing this for more than 11 years now. So yeah, it's a big mission. It's usually getting there without using an engine. That's the hard part. It's a lot of dedication. It takes just such a long time to get somewhere.
Wow. So that means, for example, when people climb Mount Everest, they drive up to the first level and then they have Sherpas and animals that help carry their stuff to maybe base camp and they have oxygen and everything. Are you doing any of that or are you walking from the very, very beginning?
Yeah, so in 2013, so that's 11 years ago now. In July, I left here from Belgium on a bicycle, on a push bike, to Nepal. And then I cycled to the nearest road of Mount Everest. And then I started walking actually all the way up to base camp and then climbed it. It took me a couple of stages to finally get there. But it took me 5 months to cycle from Belgium to Nepal. And then a couple of weeks, I think 2 weeks to get to base camp by foot. And then at least a month and a half to climb it. So yeah, it's a completely different level of getting somewhere. So climbing it is just a fraction of the part to get somewhere, to get finally to the summit of a mountain.
And did you have any training prior? Did you do it assisted with oxygen or no oxygen?
I
How did
used to
you?
go, yeah. I did a lot of prior training as well. I did some supplemental oxygen, and actually had the opportunity to work. I'm a physiotherapist, and I had the opportunity to go and work in Nepal. And one of my friends is half Belgium, half Sherpa, so half Nepali. He's from a Sherpa family, and he just invited me to come and work in Nepal. And I said, okay, I'll go there by bike. And his family is doing a lot of expeditions on other mountains, and including Mount Everest. And so they actually offered to help me to climb the mountains. So I already had quite a lot of experience in the mountains. But yeah, Everest is next level, and so I had a lot of training in Nepal itself to prepare for the mountain. My goal was, or my aim was, to go without supplementary oxygen. The weather wasn't great, so I had two options: to go up or to go down without supplementary oxygen. And I decided to use it because otherwise I just would risk my life too much, or just risk not make the summit at all.
Did you use Sherpas to help bring gear up, or I guess what made your climb different to the average Mount Everest climber?
It kind of made it different in the way that I was I didn't have my personal Sherpa, for example. So, but it doesn't mean that I did everything myself. We were in a team, and I was actually kind of in between a Sherpa and a client. So I was actually very lucky to be working. It's not really working in the expedition, but I got an opportunity to go on an expedition like that. So not being dependent on the whole climbing team with a personal Sherpa, and going with other climbers. So I was able to do a lot of autonomous climbs for acclimatization, and going up and down myself.
That's amazing. And then did you then end up cycling from Everest to the second mountain? And have you been, yeah, did you fly to the second mountain? What was the second mountain?
Well, actually, Everest was my second mountain, because on my way to Everest, when I made my route all the way from Belgium to Everest, I kind of noticed on the map. I just used Google Maps in back in those days, just to go from Belgium all the way to Kathmandu. I used the walking, and I saw with a detour of about 600 or 700 kilometers, I was able to yeah, just cycle a little bit more, let's say, to go to Elbrus, which is the highest mountain in Europe, and that's in Russia. So I just decided to make this detour. I took all my climbing gear on the bike. I cycled to Russia. I made this little detour, climbed it, and continued to Nepal. So that's how Everest actually became my second mountain, and not the first one.
Were there any visa problems getting into Russia?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was pretty hard because first of all, I was being too honest on my application as well. Um, because back then there wasn't a war yet. I think a couple of months later, there was a first phase of the Russian invasion into Ukraine. That's about 13 years ago, 11 years ago as well, in the same area. But the visa there was just mainly because I had to cross some difficult terrain like Chechnya, and I know it was political a bit sensitive. And I just told them I'm gonna cycle to Elbrus and cycle out of Russia again. And because they knew I was being too honest on my plans, because if I told them, yeah, I'm gonna go for a month to Moscow, it would have been more easy. Well, they would just say, oh yeah, just show me a hotel booking and all that. But now I had to, for every day of the month, I had to show where I was gonna sleep with a hotel booking, but not like booking.com, something like that, but like a real official letter from the hotel, signed and stamped for every night all across the places where I was going, which is impossible because if you're on a bike, you never know how far you're gonna cycle, at least for me. And some of them are really far apart, some of the hotels. So once I got my visa, it took me 2 months to finally get it. I I actually uh, canceled all those bookings and just got my tent all the way.
Oh, and majority of this round the world sort of travel, have you been staying in tents? Has that been the main sort of accommodation?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, it's very everything's very different in depending on the continent I'm at. For example, Southeast Asia is very crowded, so I didn't stay a lot in tents over there because there's a lot of people, and it's very hard to camp somewhere without being noticed because they don't have official campgrounds, so you just have to wild camp somewhere. But for example, yeah, in the desert, I'm just camping because there's nobody there. So it all depends on conditions. So Southeast Asia is a bit more like hostels or hotels or homestays, all that kind of stuff. I think in Africa, most of the time I was camping, except when I was in a city, I would take a hotel or sleep at people's places. And for the US or North America, was kind of a mixture of both, staying at people's places, but as well camping out.
And when you're staying at people's places, were these just strangers you met while cycling and they drove by and stopped and said hello, and all of a sudden they're offering you a place to stay the night?
Yeah, that happens. I think less in North America, or at least in the US, but in Asia, like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, I had a lot of those moments. A lot of people were just stopping by, asking like, "Hey, where do you sleep? Come to our place." Even so, in Kyrgyzstan, I had 5 days. I didn't have 5 days of cash money because I there was no ATM at the border I crossed, and so I didn't have any money, any local currency. I could only get money from the capital, Bishkek. And so those 5 days, I never needed money because people kept on inviting me to eat, to sleep, to have breakfast, everything. So it was really, and it was an awesome time to have, to be cycling in. In other places like the US that I'm saying, there's a big network that's called Warm Showers, and it's kind of a social network for cyclists. So if you're on the road with a bicycle, you just log in, you look on a map, and there's thousands of people all around the world, especially in the US, offering at their home a place to sleep, to eat, and all that stuff. So that's a really neat stuff as well. So it's a bit like couchsurfing, which is more known. But this is like specifically for cyclists who are on the road, and just people they say, yeah, I've got an extra bed, or I got an extra couch or anything. You can sleep here, and I provide you some dinner or breakfast, and then off you go.
That is so cool. What was the most dangerous thing? Were there any stories of you running out of water, running out of food? Was it the people? Was it like the army of the country? Was it the terrain, animals? If you think to the near death experience, what are most of them about?
Well, the biggest that comes to mind is because in 11 years there's a lot of things happening. I think in everybody's life, but especially if you're adventuring out for 11 years, in extreme conditions. I think the most extreme thing was the earthquake in Nepal in 2015. I was in Nepal, and then I was on Everest, and an earthquake happened. It's one of the biggest earthquakes in recent history in the country. 9,000 people got killed in the whole country. And I was in base camp on Everest, and there the earthquake triggered such a big avalanche that I just had to run for my life. And my mind knew I'm dead, and not just something like, oh yeah, this was a near miss. I was convinced running wasn't an option, but my body was running anyways. And it kind of made the right decision, because 19 people or 18 got killed in this avalanche. And I just got uh, base camp is not a flat surface, so it's kind of hilly a bit, and I just ran down and was hiding for this avalanche, and that actually saved me. But at the place I was standing initially, I think it would have killed me. So I think that's the biggest near miss I've had in my life. But for sure, I know I have had a lot of other near misses, maybe some near misses I'm not even aware of. I think people in general, for example, because you're asking that, I think people in general, I've had some tense situations and some difficult ones with army or conflict areas, but overall, I would say in those 11 years, they're pretty limited, those situation with people. If you're 6 months a year doing adventures like this, you meet a lot of people, and it's just a couple of times that happened where I got scared for my life. Animals is another story. Animals is something I'm always very cautious and aware of. Um, I think in Australia it's you should even be more so. But for me, I'm really cautious with snakes, spiders, scorpions, but as well as bears and all. So I take a lot of measures not to be not to be in a dangerous situation. And you still have it, at like 10 meters encounter with a hippo in at night. So sometimes it happens, and sometimes you get away with it. But I'm pretty cautious with that, I would say. Yeah.
With the avalanche situation, when you sort of ran to a place where there was a dip, did the snow just go over you, or were you covered by snow? Or after the avalanche happened, no snow, luckily, around you?
No, it's so let's say Everest Base Camp is like a line. I ran, so we are in the one side of the line, and the whole middle got swept away, but from a blast that is not, it's not like the traditional avalanche where people get carried away down slope with the snow. Actually, such a huge amount of snow and ice that fell down that created a big blast of snow, ice, and rock. So all the debris was just flying around people. People got holes in their bags from running away from the debris. And for me, I got down, covered, and then the snow blew over me, and I was covered in like a layer of snow, but not like I didn't have to dig myself out. It just I was able to crawl into one of the tents of our expedition, which was on the side of the camp. So I was a little bit more in the middle, where a lot of things got swept away, and I got to the side of the camp, and there I was pretty lucky to just run and find cover. Yeah.
And then, was it visible on which direction the snow was coming? Was it visible that it's coming in the middle and you need to run to the side? Is there a possibility you ran to the side and the snow would have hit the side?
No, and to me there wasn't anything visible at all. It was just I heard no, I felt the earth shaking, and then a Sherpa, a friend, he was just shouting at me because I was scared, like, oh yeah, but I knew nothing bad was going to happen because I'm not inside of a building. So I thought like, oh yeah, everything's fine. It's just a bit scary, but it's okay. And then somebody shouts at me like, look behind you, and I see this 100-meter cloud of snow coming straight at us. And so that there was no escaping that. And the thing is, it's just so chaotic. So I really didn't know like, yeah, what direction to go. I was just running away from it. That's the only thing I could do, run away from it. And that's at 5,200 meters altitude with full mountain gear. So it wasn't easy. And there's a couple of films of that on YouTube. I think I filmed it when I was running away from it, and there's another climber, Joost Bush, who filmed it when he was already in camp. And then you see the snow coming straight at him, because for me, just like you see me running, and suddenly it's white. There's nothing else. But for him, you see just the snow blast coming straight at you, which is it's insane to see, and it's just still yeah, it's still traumatizing to. I mean, it's not traumatizing anymore, but when I see those images, it's still like this feeling that I get back. It's crazy. Yeah, it's very scary.
So you're standing there, you feel the earthquake, the Sherpa yells at you, you see the snow coming down. Do you start running? Do you click the GoPro, turn it on to record, or is it already recording? Do you turn it on while running? What's the mindset? Because I'm in a similar situation where something bad happens, I take out my phone and I want to record it while running.
Yeah. Yeah, in that case, I usually do the same, but there I wasn't thinking about anything. I was just running. My GoPro luckily was already on. So I was just making a little video, I think, for like, oh yeah, I'm back in base camp, because I was doing a rotation on Everest, which means you go up and you go back down, like to a certain altitude to acclimatize. So I went up and back down, got back to base camp, start recording with my GoPro. Hey guys, I've just been to 6,500 meters or something. I'm back in base camp, everything's fine, and then the earth starts to shake, something like that, and then I forget what's happening. It's just such a chaos, such a yeah, it's a crazy feeling to be in that situation, and I don't think the only thing what I'm happy about is that I stopped to look and wait behind me for one of the other climbers. He was running the same. We were actually just coming down, both of us, um, and I stopped, and I remembered to look back and to say, "Come on, Carson, hurry!" in that little video. So I'm kind of happy that even in that situation, I was still thinking not just about saving my own life, but still thinking about other people. Um, which you never know how you would react in a situation like that unless you do encounter that situation.
That's so cool. I definitely I'm gonna go and try find that video of you filming. But were you still holding the tripod? Did you put it in your pocket? Yeah, like yeah.
Yeah, I just had it in my hand. The little GoPro was in my hand, and I think I think on the video that I think it's probably online on YouTube, the one that I have, and at least that one from Joost Bush as well. But at least I don't even think I'm filming myself. You just see me running like whoa, whoa, and I'm just running, and you see my leg, and you hear maybe some noise from the rocks, and some metal from my harness. Um, and I think the only thing I say, because I've been playing the video several times as well for some presentations that I do, and all that stuff. And then it's come on, Carson, hurry. And then I kind of drop to my knees. There's a Buddhist altar where I just start to hide, and then and everything gets white, and there's nothing I can see, and I start to crawl to a tent that I've been seeing, and I hope to find it, which I finally do. it doesn't take a lot of time, but it's just crazy how long it took, because in my mind, because I'm just crawling on my knees to this little tent, and I don't know if I make it, because yeah, it just, you want to go in a straight line, but in a moment like that, you will go left or right, or yeah.
Were you conscious of the place you chose to go down? Did you specifically pick the altar because it could maybe protect you? And then how did you find the tent when it was all white? And when you got into the tent, were you on your own? And how long did you wait in the tent?
I didn't consciously choose where to end up. I I just saw I was running down. The only thing I knew was, I know our camp is a little bit down, because there's people standing outside, and because there was a dining tent from the expedition, and I think maybe there's 8 people in the tent or outside. They're just standing. They feel the earth tremble. They go outside of the tent and they're looking, and I see them there, and I'm just running their direction. And about halfway of it, I see the altar of the Buddhist altar, but I know, like, now it's catching up. So I just go down on my knees, and I'm hiding from that blast, and I don't know what's happening. So it's like a very strong wind coming up, but with a lot more volume, because it's full of snow and debris. And I think that kind of helped me not to get injured at that place, because a lot of things would just, yeah, the Buddhist altar is here, and I'm just hiding here, and then it comes from that side. Um, so I don't know, it just, that helped a lot. And then going to the tent was really like, okay, I have to go there. I have to get to this tent, because there's people, and maybe it doesn't make sense to go there, but you just want to go. And I was hiding my face in a buff, because I was, otherwise you're just breathing in all the snow. So I was like, yeah, I just have to protect my face. It's hard to breathe. And then continue crawling on hands and knees, crawling to that tent. And I remember saying, like, make a straight line, you know where it is. Don't divert to left or right, just go straight. And then I got somewhere to the edges of the tent, screaming, and then some people inside the tent, because they're in panic, but they know some people are in help, and suddenly somebody catches my hand and drags me inside. And then it's we're trying to support the walls of the tent so it doesn't collapse. And I think just a little bit later it calms down, and yeah, we just start to hug each other, like, damn, we made it.
And then at base camp, how many people were there at the time, and how many people got injured? How many people died?
I think in base camp was, if I'm not mistaken, it could be like less or more, but I thought it was 19 people who died, and almost 100 people got injured. And that goes from small injury to some big ones. I think one of the first people we carried into the dining tent, I think he had two broken legs, and one was like an open wound. From the broken leg, somebody else lost an eye, or just got injured at the eye. So there were a lot of people with some holes in the back, because of just the debris flying like in their backs. So yeah, it was all chaos, and just, I think, 10 minutes after the earthquake, we were already looking for survivors, and trying to get them into safety, so they wouldn't get cold, or because, yeah, if they didn't have any clothes on, I mean, not a lot, they would just lay there and maybe freeze, or just trying to find people who were surviving, and just wait to see if help would be on the way. We didn't even know that. All communications were blocked. The whole country was destroyed, in a way that we had a satellite communications in base camp, and we were independent. So we didn't need. So we had our power came from the solar power, and we had a satellite communications. So that didn't get destroyed. But in Kathmandu, a lot of people couldn't get anywhere. So a lot of communication networks were destroyed because of the earthquake. And that meant that we had more communications than anywhere else in the country, probably. So we didn't know what was going to happen. Did some help come, or was a whole country destroyed. Yeah, it was very frightening, especially the days after, because you're still trying to find people, or still people had to be saved from higher parts on the mountain because they were just trapped somewhere because of other avalanches.
What was the total amount of people at base camp? If 100 people got injured, was 100 people like 10%, 20%, 30% of people?
I think because I'm talking about small injuries as well. Um, I think there's maybe, I wouldn't say that's 10% because I would be, there's too much people in base camp. I think we had 300 people in base camp, maybe 400. So it's quite a high rate, and the thing is, the season was really delayed because of the bad weather. There was bad weather beforehand, so the conditions on the mountain weren't great. So a lot of people were just waiting for the whole route to be better, to go up and to come back down and to fix ropes. And when it finally came, a lot of people went up. So there were quite a lot of people on the mountain, which was an area which was more safe than Everest Base Camp actually. And it's crazy because usually you would think Everest Base Camp is the safest place, and that's true in most cases, but in this case it wasn't. And so people on higher on the mountain, like in Camp 1 or 2, they saw avalanche coming and they got freaked out. But they didn't get, there wasn't really an injury reported because they saw it coming, and there was a bit of a cloud of snow coming in apparently, which is really scary if you're there. But as far as I know, nobody got really injured over there. So it's a good thing that everything got delayed a bit because everybody was waiting, was eager to go up. And then suddenly when it was getting better, people were all going up. So there was a lot more people up the mountain than there would have been. So that kind of was maybe a blessing in that, because otherwise more people would have been injured or killed.
Interesting. And after that happened with no communication, or like the whole of Nepal is everything's in chaos, did you guys have enough food supply? Could you guys restock? Was there enough gas, butane, medical oxygen? Like how long were you guys stuck there until any supply came up?
Well, luckily that was pretty fast. I think it happened on, I don't know the date. I think April 18th. It happened, and then the next day helicopters started to fly in with just to pick up injured people, just for medical care. Just started to get them. And I think 1 or 2 days later, they started, helicopters came in to pick up the people from higher camps, from Camp 1 or 2. And that was a big operation. There were like 2 or 3 helicopters flying in, getting those people, like, and because it's high altitude, you can't just put 10 people in a helicopter. That's impossible over there. So I think it was always 2 people. They could take a backpack, went back down, got out. So I helped in some of those. I mean, there was a whole morning. They fly in, they fly out, they fly in, they fly out. There was a constant on and off the mountain in base camp. And so it just like the helicopter lands in base camp. They don't even stop. They just keep on turning. We would fill gasoline in their tanks while it's turning, then let them go again. Like with jerry cans, we would just do that the whole time. It was a busy morning, but luckily everybody got safely off the mountain. So I think it took maybe 3 days, maybe 4. I think to me the scariest and most traumatizing part, yeah, maybe not the scariest, but it was pretty scary that after an earthquake like that, you get a lot of aftershocks. And during the day, every time you get an aftershock, you just look around to see like, oh, is there another avalanche coming down? Which is it's the case, always avalanches come down, but there's a nice perimeter for safety around base camp, which is okay. It's just a problem that because of the big earthquake, it got crossed, and from then on you're scared that it would happen again. And the thing is, at night was the most scary part always, because you're there in your tent, you're sleeping, and suddenly you feel an earthquake again, and you're like, please don't hit my tent, please don't hit my tent, just at night, because there's nothing you can see. Sometimes you just try to peek out to see if there's anything going on. If you can't see anything, it's just like, yeah, fingers crossed, nothing is gonna hit the tent. And I think I spent about 2 or 3 nights in base camp, because when there was no help needed anymore, I just went back down to Kathmandu to help there, because there was still a lot of problems there as well.
Wow, that is what a crazy event. Are there any tough situations where, with your level of communication, physical skills, sort of knowledge, you're able to beat and conquer, where most people would have either got caught or died in that scenario?
I think not in that scenario. I think it's in that scenario. I think people were just taking care of each other. Even people who would be not experienced or anything. I think base camp is still quite a luxurious place in the sense that it's full of tents. There's a lot of food, and I think you could survive for a couple of weeks even there. It's just so if you don't have any experience or anything, I think people would just take care of you. You just stay inside one tent. People would just give you some tea and some food. But I think it's important, or at least if you got experience, there's a lot more you can do for others, and there's a big difference. There's people who are not capable, I mean, mentally, physically, in any way possible, which is, it's normal. There's nothing to blame in there for sure. But we're not capable of doing anything, and there's people doing a lot in situations like that. And I think it comes down, part of it is experience, and part of it is just something you kind of are born with, I would say. So yeah, that creates a lot of different things. I heard a story, and I don't know her personally or anything, but about a doctor. At the first time, she just went away from base camp as fast as possible, because she's like, I'm not gonna stay here. This is over the top. I'm afraid for my life, and there's nothing wrong with that, because if you feel that, you should get away from the danger. But then in the end, she went to help in Kathmandu, and to help people who got injured there. So it's just something. I wouldn't say it's a selfish choice. It's just you have to protect your own life first, and that's something very important. Because when you're constantly fighting for your life, you can't help anybody else. And so and there's a big difference in how people cope with it.
How about over your last 11 years? Has there been any near death scenarios where you survived not due to luck, but due to skill and experience and knowledge, and you just made it because you had a lot of experience?
Yeah, I think quite a lot of them, to be honest. And I think most of those came to the reason why I managed to pull it off or to be safe is the experience. And the experience mostly comes down to being patient, in a way, to say like, oh yeah, this is a bad situation or potentially dangerous situation. Let's be patient. For example, being on a mountain, where bad weather is coming in, I'm just gonna say, yeah, let's prevent being in this extremely dangerous situation, and just be patient now and then go for it. I think being cautious with that is a very important thing. And it's the same on an ocean. It's on an ocean. I've been rowing for 16 days where I got seasick. For 16 days non-stop. We were three in one ocean rowboat on the water, bad weather, and just constantly seasick. And we had to make a decision, and we alerted the Coast Guard, because we were near the Canary Islands, and we alerted them like, yeah, there's a situation where I got seasick for 16 days. So it means you don't get any food. You're getting very dehydrated. So it's getting nearer and nearer to a life-threatening situation. What I usually do before an expedition as well, I make a whole document for a safety manager to be able to know what to do when something happens. I think that's important to have somebody on in Belgium or anywhere else in the world, but at least to have that, and somebody knows what to do when something happens. So she contacted the Coast Guard, she contacted the doctor, and so we had a lot of communication with people around us, which was still far away because we were in the middle of the ocean. But then by being patient, I mean like, okay, let's go. We weren't planning to go to Canary Islands. We were planning to go to Miami, so which is a bigger distance even. But to say like, okay, now this is not gonna happen, and let's be patient. Let's take things at a time and just go to Tenerife, to Canary Islands, and see from there what's going to happen. So we went there. We didn't need a rescue, but it's just something. If you would think like, yeah, I really want to do it, and I'm just gonna push it and push it and push it, then it becomes more and more dangerous. And so there, I think patience is one of the biggest things that I've learned during those 11 years. That is probably one of the most important things to have. It's a good skill to have, to be patient. Yeah. And it's I think it's a life-saving thing as well. I think for everybody, just in regular life as well, but as well on expeditions. If you're patient, because if you're not patient, or time is not on your side, you will take too many risks, and then it gets dangerous. Yeah, for sure. So I think there in those cases, I think my experience of that helps a lot, as well as like winter surviving skills, and being around animals, wild animals, or knowing their presence. That's something that with experience grows and grows more. And that experience comes sometimes from making mistakes, for sure.
How do you stay patient when you're running out of water, food, resources, money? Like as we speak right now, my company, we're bleeding out. We're sort of like each month I'm making payroll, just figuring out just on the last day of each month. And it's really hard to be patient and let time iron things out. Yeah, any tips there?
Well, to me, I think I learned a lesson pretty the hard way. When I was 17 years old, I mean, even before that, a couple of years before that, my parents got in a big divorce, and it made me land up on the streets here in Belgium. I mean, I was living in squats for 3 years, no water, no electricity, going from one empty building to the other one, getting kicked out by the police. Luckily, I was born in Belgium and I was able to become a physiotherapist. So I got some nice opportunities. But the thing that I learned there at the age of 17 is I was doing good in school. I was having a good life, and suddenly everything to me, my life just got swept away, and I kind of knew what it was to have nothing. And there's one song from an artist, or one album even, that's still on my mind when I'm doing that, and it's called from C6 Steve. He's an artist that was a hobo, or I don't know how to say that in English.
Homeless, hobo, homeless.
Yeah, homeless person. Yeah, was homeless, and he just got discovered. Apparently the story goes with three snares on his guitar and all that stuff. I don't know if that's true, but at least his song is like, I started out with nothing and I still have most of it left, and that actually helped me, or helps me a lot when things go wrong in life, because I am just being grateful for a lot of small things, and these expeditions help me. And so being patient is one thing, but sometimes just things go wrong, and when you're running out of water or food, which I had in my life, and not just on my expeditions, in other parts of my life as well. Now I live a luxurious life, in my opinion, and maybe most people don't. Maybe a lot of people don't agree with it, but when I sleep in my tent and I have water and food, I feel very comfortable, because those are my main concerns, and that makes it. I wouldn't go all my life always living like that, but it just helps me to realize that if I have those two basic, like three basic needs, I have a shelter, I have food, and I have water. If I have that, everything's fine. It's gonna be okay. It will be, and I feel more relaxed. And I try to take these feelings back in daily life as well. Like being grateful that I can push a button and some light comes out of the wall, or turning a knob and water comes out of the wall. I didn't have that for 3 years when I was 17 years old. And every time I was able to do that at a friend's place or somewhere, I was grateful, like, oh, I can take a shower. Nice. And it's not that I'm a religious person or something, so it's not like, oh, thank you, God, for all this stuff. Everybody can make their own choice in that. But for me, just I'm just grateful to have that. Just grateful to be able to do that. And when I'm on expedition and I'm running out of food or water, I'm just trying to ration that for sure, because then suddenly you don't have a lot of water, which I had to do in the past. And you have to be creative with things. I remember one time my sleeping bag, I was frozen. I was in Tibet in winter, which was minus 25 degrees Celsius. And I got up and I didn't have water. All my water was gone. And yeah, when you're cycling, you're in this kind of altitude, you have to drink a lot. And I remember my sleeping bag was like full of ice from breathing out, and I just started to lick my sleeping bag just to get some water. So sometimes you just have to, yeah, be creative with things, which is not always easy. And that's why I think if you stay calm and you want to be patient, or you stay patient and calm, I think you can be creative, and you have to look around sometimes, because sometimes you just you can get into a tunnel vision, and that's something I do as well when I'm cycling or I'm in expedition, and I'm just focused on details, and I'm just always like, and which is good because it helps you to go from point A to point B in all these small steps, and you just get trapped in all those details. But sometimes to me it's just good to zoom out and to realize what I'm doing there. Like, oh yeah, I'm cycling in the desert, or I'm here making my dream come true. And that helps me motivate. And sometimes by zooming out and asking people around, like, what should I do? That helps me to explore different ways and take those things seriously and find a new path, maybe. Because sometimes I'm questioning myself, what am I doing here? And if I'm not really into that anymore, I will ask people, or I will zoom out, because sometimes I just too focused in a tunnel vision. I try to zoom out and see what other ways there are to get to my goal, because my goal is still there. I get into a difficult position, I know my goal is still there, but sometimes I have to make a detour for something, which I had to do a lot of times in my life, and I still have to do sometimes. It's like, oh yeah, this doesn't work, let's try another way. And ask advice sometimes to others, even sometimes it might seem ridiculous in the first place. At least take it seriously and try to find, is this an option or not? And sometimes it is, sometimes it's just too ridiculous to do. So yeah, there's a lot of different things in there that I'm trying to use on my expeditions, and I think people can use it in their daily lives as well. Yeah.
I love that wisdom, Yella. So when you finished Everest, did you then cycle to the third mountain? And if not, were you pausing and starting this journey? And every time you paused and you went back to Belgium, did you fly back to where you stopped and then continue from there? And then how do you cross the Atlantic and go to North America? I rowing across the Atlantic. Like, yeah, how did it work logistically over the last 11 years?
Yeah, so in that way, it's correct. I'm not 11 years in one go, so I'm doing it in stages. First, when I left 11 years ago, I thought I'm gonna do it in one go, in one line. I'm going around the world to every continent by human power, climbing the highest peak. It's gonna take me 5 years. That was my idea. I had 3,000 euros on my bank account, and that was it. I took everything I had in my life, and I thought, yeah, I'm just gonna pull it off. Which to my big surprise, I'm still pulling it off, or I'm pulling it off, because it was just kind of a guess. I didn't know, like, will I be able to do it, because I didn't have any sponsorships. I didn't have a lot of money. They were just like, yeah, let's see what happens. And then I realized when I was in Nepal and these expeditions, for example, on Everest, I had two other. So in 2014, 16 people died, or 13, from a serac fall. In 2015, the earthquake. It's not that I was able to stay for a long time in Nepal because my visa runs out. Then I had to go back to Belgium and start from where I left. And from then on, I decided, okay, it's not possible to do it in one go. So I always do it in stages. And that means that where I stop, I will continue or go from a route. So it's the line that I'm making is in that way without using an engine, but not continuously, because it just takes a lot of, yeah, you have to get all your visas done, you have to, financially, all that stuff. It's almost impossible to do. I mean, almost, I would say impossible, but I hope so. Maybe someone can show me wrong one day. But at least when I got after Everest, there's a lot of water in the world, I realized, and I was going from Kathmandu to Indonesia, and I started to row to Papua, because in the mountaineering there's like two definitions, let's say, and people would opt for Papua, which is just north of Australia, where's the highest mountain of Oceania, or people would say Australia as a continent, as a country and a continent, and then they would go for Kosciuszko. So, but I think there's more of a consensus that people would say, yeah, it's Papua because it's a higher mountain, and it's a more difficult one, so it's more of a challenge. So I rode all the way to Papua, which took me 6 months by island hopping. That was a crazy experience to me, because I didn't have any ocean or sea experience. Luckily, an Australian friend actually joined me in the first couple of weeks. Experienced kayaker. He knew the sea pretty well, so I'm really happy about that. But then for the other side, going to North America, I tried to row the Atlantic all the way to Miami, which was about to take 3 months. But like I said before, it was, I think, 16 days I got seasick. We had to stop in the Canary Islands for my safety. And then I had to decide my body is not capable of rowing the ocean. So I sailed to Panama from there. And that was in stages as well, because after the rowing expedition, so I'm saying that just to make the story sometimes easier. I'm saying, oh yeah, then I sailed to there, but yeah, that's 2 years later I sailed there, so it's not like, oh yeah, then suddenly a sailboat is there and I'm sailing across the ocean. It doesn't work like that. It takes a lot more preparation and training to be finally doing something else, of course.
Got it. So you stopped at the Canopy Islands, and then would you fly back to Belgium, and then when 2 years later fly back to Canopy Island and continue?
Yeah, no, from the Canary Islands, from there I took a ferry back to Spain, which took me about 2 days, I think, and then I cycled back to Belgium just to clear my mind, because my bike was there as well. But what I did is then I think 2 years later, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, I cycled from Belgium to France, and there I sailed to the Canary Islands again, and then I sailed to Panama, because just port of departure was in France. I was joining a sailing crew, and that's how I sailed. And yeah, and that's actually what I'm saying about making new plans and rearranging things, asking people for advice, and then the thing was like, oh yeah, what will I do after the failed rowing attempt? And I was like, oh yeah, the earth is round. Let's go through Russia to the Bering Strait, cross the Bering Strait into Alaska, and go to North America. Then I don't have to row the ocean. So I was making all these plans, preparation for months, and a couple of weeks before I'm trying to start the expedition. Yeah, Putin invades Ukraine, so I couldn't do that anymore, because that's a part of Russia that is pretty sensitive, because it's border area with the US. So I had to change all these plans, and then with my sponsorships going on, I just had to make a new plan. And people said, yeah, why don't you fly to Alaska? And then maybe later when the war is over, you can try to do that. Like, yeah, but I don't feel it, I want to do something. And then some other people said, maybe you can try and sail. And I'm like, okay, I'll try and sail. So I just contacted a lot of people who were sailing. And then I just went on a boat as a crew from France to Canary Islands all the way to Panama.
Did you have any swimming experience? Like as you're kayaking, did you know how to swim? So if you fell off, could you swim back to the kayak? And then question two, what made you do the kayak in the first place? Why didn't you start with the sail?
Um, yeah. So the first question is, I was able to swim, but because yeah, in Belgium you learn how to swim from a young age, so that's good. And being a physiotherapist, we had to learn in university as well some techniques about swimming, and I'm a sport physiotherapist, so there's like really biomechanical studies a little bit about swimming we did. But I'm a really terrible swimmer, so so in that way, I'm good in most sportsy things, but swimming is really not good for me. Um, so yeah, but I was able to swim. Yeah. And then yeah, why I rowed is instead of sailing, uh, I don't know. So I regretted it a lot, to be honest. It's been such a hard thing to be rowing, especially because I'm not a big ocean person. I love the ocean. That's not a thing. It's just being out on the ocean for days or weeks. It's pretty hard, and it feels hard to me. I loved the rowing part because it just created a little bit more physical challenge and mental challenge because it's slower. And so I thought, like, yeah, I'm just gonna cross all the way to Papua by rowboat, which I did, which was great, a great experience. But I would never do that again. There's other parts with the cycling or climbing. It's like, oh yeah, that would be nice. But this, no, never again. It's been just such a hard part. So yeah, and then in the end, yeah, now I sailed the ocean, so it's I could have sailed all the way to Panama as well, but I don't regret having done that. I was regretting making the choice when I was on the mission, but now I'm like, yeah, okay, I've had some nice adventures as well, so I don't have a lot of regrets in my life anyways, but that is definitely not one of them.
I love that. Yellow, why are you doing this? Like what, like why? It's so difficult, it's so challenging. How have you made it happen the last 11 years? Like how do you fund it? Because it's quite expensive, all these different things. And yeah, why?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons why I'm doing it. And one of them is just I love adventure. I think that's one of the main things that it's like my own motivation. It doesn't come from somewhere else. It just because I want to do it because I love adventure. And back in those days, I heard about the seven summits. Somebody who I met just climbed the seven summits, and I was cycling to other mountain peaks in Europe to climb them and cycle back. And everything came together because I had the job offer in Nepal, and so all that stuff. And I thought like this is the biggest adventure for myself, and not to impress anybody, not become the first one in anything, but just for myself that I could do in my life. That was the biggest adventure actually that I could think of doing that, because it combines so much disciplines. It's not just cycling around the world, or it's not rowing, it's not sailing, it's not walking, it's not climbing, it's everything together. So to me, that was like the beauty of it. So that I think that's the main first motivation, but there's a lot of other things as well. Without using an engine? And one of the main reasons there is you go slowly. And I've discovered that before as well on my cycle trips to other mountains in Europe. You see the world when you travel by car, by plane, which I all do as well sometimes, but not in that project. And so you see the world and it's beautiful. But when you do it by bike or by rowboat or by sailboat or by foot, you feel it because you have much more interaction with your environment. So You feel when the sun is there, when it rains. You have interaction with people. People wave at you. Hey, how are you? You make a little stop. You see how their life is doing. And so there's a lot of more aspects, a lot of more dimension in that way of travel. And that's what I love as well. It just, even it's for a couple of days. I think a lot of people, when they do that, they kind of feel like, yeah, this brings me back to some basic things in my life. Like I mentioned before, if you have a shelter, food, and water with you, you actually feel okay. Oh, it starts to rain. Yeah, let's pitch a tent and make some food or drink some water, and then you can continue when it stops. Um, I mean, I'm explaining it much more simple than it sometimes is, of course. In the mountains, it's a whole different story. There you have to get a lot of experience before you can do it safely. But at least you kind of feel like, yeah, maybe it's not because I'm uncomfortable that I can't feel good. Um, that's something important as well, and that's something you learn by doing that. So I really love the feeling of being outside and finding people around the world. And sometimes I jokingly have said in the US, for example, because of the coming elections, I've been talking a lot with people in the US, and I said, yeah, maybe it's a good idea to have every president or candidate president to cross the country in on a bicycle, because then they get to know their country better. Because I think in some ways, and it's not about US only, but I think there's a lot of countries that I got to know a lot better just because I was riding a bike. And that's a beautiful thing, as well. For Indonesia, I've been rowing the whole length of Indonesia by island hopping. I know a lot of little islands that maybe many Indonesians never have heard of. And that's, yeah, if it wasn't for rowing, I would have been flying to Papua. There's nothing wrong with it, I think, but at least I would have skipped a lot of land and ocean to be discovered by myself, just to know those people, to talk to them, to know how their lives going. And then the other question is like, how do you fund it, or how do you do it? When I left Belgium 11 years ago, I told before, I had 3,000 euros on my bank account. Cycling back in those days was pretty cheap, especially that region. If you're in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, even Russia, it's a beautiful country. People are very friendly. They see you cycling. They have respect for you. My bike was 100 kilograms because of all the climbing gear. And yeah, so people keep on inviting you. So it didn't cost me a lot of money to get to Nepal. But I was always hoping to get some sponsorships back then, which didn't really work. But once I climbed Everest, there was a television interview in Belgium, and the CEO of Secutech, which is something that's on my shirt, on all the adventures and all that stuff. It's a cybersecurity company. They have nothing to do with adventure in that case. That it's not like an outdoor brand or something. But they contacted me to be on my shirt, and we got a deal pretty fast after that thing. And since 8 years, they sponsor me, and they sponsor all these adventures. And that's really nice. So in that way, I'm able to be a full-time professional, as well, combined with some guiding I do sometimes, or some keynote talks that I do for companies. And I do it for companies like motivational talks. I do talks for the government, for all of different things. And so that helps me as well to fund and make a living out of it. And once in a while, I work as a physiotherapist, but not because I have to, just mainly because I want to. And sometimes jokingly, I tell my patients, I made my hobby my job, and my job became my hobby. So I'm having a pretty good life at the moment. Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. Where are you at on the mission? How many peaks have you climbed so far? What's the next one?
So for now, in the 11 years that I've been doing, I've been climbing five of the seven summits. So I climbed Elbrus. So I cycled to Mount Elbrus, is the highest mountain of Europe. Then I cycled to Everest. I climbed Mount Everest. Then I continued cycling to Southeast Asia, and I rode to Papua, and that's Carson's Pyramid. So that's a third one. And then from Belgium, I started again, and I cycled to south of Spain, kayaked across to Africa, and then crossed Africa by bicycle. Then I climbed Kilimanjaro, which is the fourth of the Secutech 7 summits. That's actually the name of the project now. And then the fifth I recently did is Denali. So I crossed the ocean, cycled all across Central America, from Panama to Central America to Alaska. And that was a fifth. And that's I think about 2 months ago I came back from that expedition. So I still have two to go. So for me the finish line is I can start I start to see it, which is good because for 11 years I'm doing it now, and to be honest, it makes I'm pretty tired in my life. Not I mean, it's not that I don't have the motivation anymore, not at all, but I feel like 11 years doing every day to get there, it's tiring, and it's normal. There's nothing wrong with it. To be honest about it as well, that it's tiring. And so I'm happy that I'm getting closer and closer to fulfill my life dream, my life's work actually.
Which is going to be the sixth continent, and from now till then, how long is the planning period? And are you just planning every day?
I'm not planning every day at all. I'm especially for the cycling part. I'm so experienced by now that yeah, I actually kind of know like I want to go from point A to point B, and what's in between. I kind of look around like which country is safer, for example. For example, in Africa, I did a detour of 8,000 kilometers just for safety to avoid the biggest conflict areas. And so that's how I plan. But daily, I don't, for the big expeditions on mountains, I do that a little bit more in detail, of course. But for cycling, it's more easy, it's more safe. But the next mountain will be Aconcagua. It's in South America, it's the highest mountain, and it's in Argentina. And I'll be starting off from Panama, because that's where I landed by sailboat. The problem there is there's a little part, about 300 or 400 kilometers, which is called the Darien Gap. There's no roads. It's a big drug traffic and human trafficking. Not a road, but a stretch of jungle, which is supposed to be pretty dangerous. So I'll be kayaking along the shores of Papua to Colombia. It's gonna take me about 2 to 3 weeks, just along the beach, which is not too hard, I would say. And then I'll cycle to Argentina from there. And I think my timeline is, because I have to take the seasons into account. It's not just like, oh yeah, I want to climb this mountain, let's do it in winter. People do it, but I just want to be more on the safe side. It's already hard getting there. I'm not gonna make it a lot harder to climb the mountain in a special way. The normal way is good enough for me. So I'll be, I think, half of October. I'll be doing the first part of that, and I'll be doing it in a couple of stages. But then by the end of 2025, I'll be climbing the highest mountain of South America. So it's gonna take a while to cycle, to kayak, but as well I have to take the seasons into account, and that means that for Aconcagua it's our winter, but it's summer there, like Australia, and that's in December, January. I have to climb it, and so I've set my mind on December 25. I'll be conquering that mountain, and then after that there's still one more to go, of course, and then I think that's not the biggest or hardest mountain to climb is Mount Vincent in Antarctica. I wouldn't say that. It's cold, of course. It's a bit like Alaska. It's like Denali. It's pretty cold, which I have a lot of experience in. So I'm not concerned about the cold. It's more getting to the mountains is my biggest concern, and it will take me a year or 2 years even to prepare to do that approach, because I'll have to cycle to Ushuaia, the southernmost point of South America, and from there I'll be sailing from there to Antarctica, get to land, and then ski all the way to Mount Vincent. And so from the moment I leave South America, there will be no shops or no supplies anymore. So we'll have to take everything for us for months. And that's a big challenge. So that's gonna be, I'm not gonna do it alone. I will be in a team. I still have to figure out a lot of details for that, but I don't even know where to land on Antarctica yet. I know somebody has tried before. They kind of failed last year, but some other people have been going from the coast to the highest mountain of Antarctica by skis. So a lot of these things have been done separately, but in one go, yeah, that's a big mission. Definitely, it's one of the most treacherous oceans or crossings in the world as well by on water. So I know for that it's gonna take a huge amount of resources, skills, logistics. Everything has to be combined, and I think I'll have to combine my own personal career and all the experience there in one go. Everything has to be right, including my other team members as well. If they don't have the right skills, yeah, then they won't join me. It's gonna be hard to find the right people, but I think it's gonna be a lot of fun at the same time.
That's so cool. Yeah. Are your team members working with you full time, or are they freelancers?
No, there's nobody really working with me full time. It's mostly that I hire people, or some of them, like my safety manager. It's the mother of really good friends of mine, and actually she's a good friend of mine. She's retired now, and she's doing that as a volunteer, and it's really nice because she has a lot of experience traveling. She knows how to deal with all that stuff. She has different language skills, so it's really nice to have her on my side. And like my climbing partners, depending on the situation, but like now in Denali, I had to find a climbing partner quickly because a friend of mine was going to join me, but he got injured in a climbing accident. So I had to find somebody new pretty quickly. And then I was lucky that my sponsor said like, oh yeah, we wanna help out, and then they funded his expedition as well, or at least that part, not the whole expedition, but the climbing part. He was with me because you could do it alone, but it's just more of a suicide attempt, I would say. At least the way I did it. So most of the time, people are just volunteering, but sometimes, depending on the conditions, I'm paying their flights or their logistics. But for the climbing partners or for the partners for Antarctica, it will be a communal effort. I think if people want to do something crazy and like a huge adventure, and I know some people who want to do that for sure. We'll have to combine all the forces, and that means that I won't be able to hire people to go and climb, or at least to sail with me to cross Antarctica and to climb that mountain, because it's just such a huge project that it's gonna take 4 months, and if you have to, it's gonna take so much money as well at the same time to do all those logistics. If you have to pay somebody to be with you, then it's just gonna be even more crazy. But when I'm working, like I'm sometimes for certain things, I'm like, oh yeah, people are freelancing for me. Yeah, I don't really have somebody in on the payroll. Let's say in Belgium, it's very expensive to do that. We have a lot of taxes, so it's always easier or even better to hire a freelance. Just yeah.
That makes sense, yeah, because like the Antarctica trip, that's going to be a big, expensive project. Do you have to figure out the budgeting? Does Secutech fund it all? Do they have a budget where they're like, hey, this is the limit, or are they quite lenient?
Well, that's something like those details I haven't figured out yet. But I know we'll have to talk about it for sure. It's not something like I can say now to them. This is gonna be the budget of it. For now, it's always been very nice. It's the budget hasn't been a real issue, not at all. So that's I'm happy and grateful for. But for the Antarctica story, it's something we still have to figure it out. I don't know how the budgeting would go. There's a lot of unknowns in it because it's not that I'll buy a sailboat and do it. It's just something I hope to find the right people who want to do it with me, and then do that. And then, yeah, it's not like suddenly. huge budgets will come out anyways. I think people going on an adventure like that, like I did with the rowing, they had there were those were people who had their own sponsorships, and they were joining me because it was just a crazy project to do. People would I help, like for example my team members, I always try to help them find their own sponsorships because I got the experience in that as well, and I got some connections like in corporate life to say like, oh yeah, maybe you can contact this company or this company, we can find out maybe, or I help you making some nice sponsorship proposals, all that stuff, to find a sponsorship. And that's probably something we'll have to do as well from Antarctica.
Which or how much was the most expensive leg of the journey out of all the different legs?
I think probably the ocean rowing. We were three people, and to give an idea, it took us a year of preparation, including making the rowboat. I mean, I didn't make it, but my friend who I was rowing with, he makes it. But only the rowboat itself is about. I think the price of it is about 100 to 150,000 euros. It's high tech. It's crazy. It's handmade carbon fiber, full of, yeah, the solar panels, water maker for for ocean water. It's pretty expensive, a boat like that. But if you look at it, how much work is in it, it's like, I mean, if you want to buy a carbon fiber boat in any class or a car of carbon fiber, it's gonna cost you a lot of money. Um, so it's kind of the same thing, you know. It's like the Ferrari of rowboats or something. I would say. It's just handmade, and it took him a year as well to make it. And that's just the boat part. And then skip if you just go if you go back to logistics, shipping all that stuff, it costs a lot of money. I once had to ship a rowboat to Indonesia and back. That costed me about $20,000. So all that stuff is pretty expensive. Luckily the cycling is cheap. And I'm not gonna say all that money is, for example, the rowboat, the 100,000 or 150,000, we didn't have to pay that because the friend who made it was on the rowing team. But if people would want to do that, it's I think budgets like that are not uncommon. I think people, if they want to row an ocean, it's about those prices. Yeah. Then you have your food and all that stuff. For me, the food, it's a couple of thousand of dollars. It's the same, but for me, for example, the Denali expedition, I think I had more than $10,000 of gear on me. But I'm lucky to be sponsored in that as well. So it helps to be having. If I wouldn't have been sponsored, it would have been cheaper. But because I'm sponsored, I can go for the best gear and the lightest and the warmest and the most. So in that way, I'm like I said, I'm pretty blessed and lucky with my life at the moment. I don't have to think about, or I think about it, of course, but it's just if for example now I knew I was going to 40 below, like minus 40 Celsius. Yeah, I knew I needed a very warm sleeping bag, and then one of my sponsors, they made a special sleeping bag for me. So that's a luxury situation I'm at. Yeah, for sure.
That is so cool. I guess what happened with the rowboat now that you finished? Do you guys sell it? Do you guys keep it? How does it work with stuff like that?
So the rowboat I was rowing to Papua with was a smaller one that was a lot cheaper, a lot cheaper. But it was here in Belgium, and it was I didn't have the space to store it anywhere. So the sea rowing club in Belgium is making use of it, which is nice, because otherwise it's just laying there because I'm on the other expeditions. And then the rowboat we were using the ocean with, the big one, and it's now my friend who made it is actually leasing the boat to other adventurers. So he's selling some of those boats. Um, at least I think it's in this price range. I don't know for how much exactly he's selling it, but I think it's something like that. He mentioned it once, but at least he's leasing it as well, so people can lease it when they want to cross an ocean by rowboat. And actually, surprisingly, a lot of people do that from the Canary Islands to the Caribbean, which is a short section. It's not short, but and quite a lot of people do that because there's kind of an ocean rowing competition every year doing it in December.
When you were doing the rowing, how do you sleep? Do you just sit there and close your eyes and sleep, and then the water's moving around?
It's kind of like that, but it's so when I was in rowing to Papua, I was usually sleeping on islands. So I was doing it by island hopping, um, which is really difficult because people would think, oh yeah, there's a lot of islands, and that's my first thought as well. Oh, a lot of islands, I can sleep on the island. The problem is the closer you're at land, the more dangerous it gets because the waves are breaking. There's rocks, there's crocodiles, there's currents, there's a lot of things going wrong near land. It's like a plane, takeoff and landing is always the most dangerous part. Once you're in the air, it's all good, usually. And it's the same on a boat. When you're in the middle of the ocean, it's a bit safer because water is just crashing on your boat, maybe, but you have cabins in those boats and you can close them off watertight, and even the boat can capsize, like this rowboat that I mentioned, the big one. The boat I used to row to Papua with didn't have any cabins, but the one that I was rowing the ocean with had cabins, so two cabins, and there you can just close it in a storm and sit and relax. Is not easy, but you're crammed up in a space with two people. It's not comfortable at all. You're at this foam mattress, everything's wet, everything's cold. It's kind of a miserable place to be. Your hands are wrinkled the whole time. You're the whole time wet. But at least you have a safe place to sleep. So even if the boat capsizes, it's kind of built to auto ride itself. So it's just we've been testing that on the water as well. Like, oh yeah, if it capsizes, does it come back up or not? And it does. So all important things to have on a boat like that.
Interesting. Is the cabin watertight, or can water get in? And if it is watertight, how do you get oxygen?
It's completely watertight. Yeah. There are some ventilation mechanisms with kind of a valve, but it's not recommended to be 24 hours completely watertight, of course. So I think we had it a couple of times that we were in a storm and we had to close it down, and then you just open it once in a while just to air it out, and you just hope then a wave doesn't hit you, because then it's yeah. So usually you do it at like a little bit calmer moments, but just air it out once in a while.
For your trip in Antarctica, are you allowed? What's your thoughts on using kites?
That's the same.
Um, it's something I have been considering, and I still have to find it out because I don't know if it's a possibility or not. Preferably, I would do it without. I think it just adds a little bit more extra challenge. And on the other hand, because I've been hearing and reading stories about people trying to use kites, and maybe on their whole trip in Antarctica, they've been able to use it once because you have to have the right wind, the right direction. It's not that you can have multiple kites on you to say like, oh yeah, there's high wind, I'm gonna take a smaller one, then now I'm gonna take a big one. You're limited in space and you want to keep everything compact and light. So in that way, I don't know yet, but I think it will be without guides. Yeah.
When you prepare for expeditions like Antarctica, do you ever reach out, consult to other explorers that have done it? Have you like reached out or spent time with like Mike Horn or Ranulph Fiennes or all these? Yeah.
I haven't reached out to them yet. I've been beforehand. I've been reaching out to other people who've been on Antarctica. And there's another Australian actually going next season, going from the sea to summit of Mount Vincent. I can't remember his name at the moment, but I've been reaching out to him because just to know, like, yeah, we've been doing a Zoom call and then just like seeing, like, I want to know how he's been handling all those or how his preparations are going, trying to keep an eye on that in a friendly in a friendly way. It's not there's no competition. So trying to know how his preparations are going, and at the same time, yeah, he's interested in some of my stuff that I've been doing, because he has some plans, maybe doing something from sea to summit, from other mountains. And Dixie Dansercourt is a Belgian explorer who sadly has passed away, I think 2 years ago. But he was a polar traveler and he had a lot of experience. And I was reaching out to him a couple of years ago as well, and we were in contact in this email traffic, and especially for Antarctica, that was the person to be contacting. Sadly, it's not happening at the moment. But probably I'll be contacting people like Mike Horn and such as well, just to get ideas, to maybe they know people who know other people, and that's something I've been learning as well in the past. It's just like, yeah, don't be afraid to reach out to people and just ask them. It's just something like, oh yeah, I need your help, and people all around the world are always eager to help, or at least most of the time. I think if you want to have a connection with somebody, ask them for help. That's something I've been learning as well. It's just, oh yeah, because if somebody comes to me and they say, yeah, I need your help, and yeah, I'm happy to help. It's just something people like to do anywhere in the world. And when you reach out to those people, I mean, to me, Mike Horn is somebody like, yeah, I can't even compare myself to him. It's somebody so much such an experienced guy, and he's just things he's been doing. But then I think, yeah, maybe he would like to help. I don't know. I just want to try. So I definitely, people like that I'll be contacting for the Antarctica story. Yeah.
That's so cool. When you were rowing around Papua New Guinea, Malaysia, were there any cool tribal stories or even in Africa? Yeah.
Yeah, Africa, not that much, in a way that Africa is. I mean, there's you see all of it. You go from village to village, and that's a nice thing. You see a lot of villages. You see some, but like tribal. Yeah, I've been sleeping in places where the Maasai are. The Maasai are known from their warrior skills and hunting skills. But I would say in Indonesia, I've had, especially on the east of Indonesia, there's like a lot of islands with no phone connection, and where people are far away from each other, like maybe 100 kilometers till the next island, and they don't have any decent facility to make that trip. They just get off their islands maybe once in a lifetime, some of those people. So the world is pretty remote in those places, and I remember being in one of those islands, arriving, and there's just one village, because I've been scouting the whole Google Earth actually for preparation of all Indonesia, to see which island is some kind of construction. Maybe there's a village, maybe there's something on the satellite images, and suddenly I come to an island and I know there might be a village. So I go around it and I'm like, oh yeah, there's an old Japanese boat that has been sunken. It's a fishing boat, and it's rusty. It's there in the waves. The waves are crashing on it. I go to the land. People from the village, they come to me, but first you're waving like, oh yeah, guys, can you help me? Because yeah, I'm on a rowboat. People look at you, they think you're crazy, because they just see this white guy on a rowboat arriving at their land, while they are not able to leave their island that easily. I mean, they go fishing, but just like a couple of kilometers off the coast on a small fishing boat with an outside motor, wooden boat. And then for me, I just arrived there on a rowboat, and they think it's crazy. And so I arrive, and I start to pitch my tent. I ask them permission to camp on their beach. And when the moment you pitch your tent, people are like, they're in awe, they're surprised, because all these poles, they clip in each other, and they're like, whoa, what's happening? You're like magic. They know modern ways, of course. It's not like ancient tribes or anything, so it's not that, but at least people are surprised to see all these neat little camping tricks. And some of those, especially younger people, like even young adults, have never seen a white guy or a white person in their life, which is special to them, and to me special, and I'm honored to be visiting them, because that's what interesting me is the people in all that story. Because that's what I call the human power in that adventure as well. It's all the human interactions I have along the way. And so when I'm there on this island, I'm like, yeah, they tell me like, oh yeah, kepala kepala, which means head in Indonesian, and they make this sign like they slit their throat, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm all alone on this island. There's no phone reception, so I can't call anybody. I just have a satellite emergency device, so when there's an emergency, I can press an emergency button, but it wouldn't save my life if somebody would do something wrong. But at least they tell me that they take their machetes, take me to the jungle. My Indonesian is not good enough to know what they're trying to say, but they just say kepala, and then they make the gesture of their throat, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm joining them to the jungle. So we chop, they chop with the machete up, and we go, and then they take me to this cave like thing, and there's 30 human skulls. And so I, I get pretty scared, because I'm like, okay, now I know in areas like East Indonesia and Papua, there's been first of all, like, people being killed in history for territorial reasons. And people have been fishing there, they kill them, they put their bones somewhere as a sign, like, don't come here because you'll be killed, or for cannibalism. And so your imagination starts to go, you just make up stories in your head, like, yeah, and at the same time you try to calm yourself, no, it's gonna be fine. And the imagination is always worse than reality. So I make a couple, so they're like, yeah, you'd have to take a picture of these skulls, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I take a picture. And then we go back, then they're like, yeah, we go back to the village. I mean, as far as my Indonesian goes, of course, they don't speak English, but they take a different route back to the village. So I'm getting more and more a bit stressed and scared. In the end, actually, really nice people. So we went back to the village, they give me food, they give me everything, but I'm always a little bit on guard until the moment I leave on my rowboat and everybody's waving by the next day, and they give me all that food, they give me some coconuts on my boat. So they're all really, really nice people, but it's just like, yeah, your imagination starts to pop up, and you know about those human skulls. They were old skulls and it's not that there were still flesh on or anything. They were old skulls. There was some moss, some green moss on it. But still, you if you're in a situation like that, it's not like, oh yeah, I feel very comfortable around human skulls with some people in machetes in the jungle. Um, so in the end, lovely people. I had a great time there. So that's kind of things like that I've encountered, and that's not the only thing that I've been encountering. It's just like in Papua, it's been as well, like people still hunting with bow and arrow in certain places. Not in the city in Papua, but in some places in village I've been, you see people hunt with bow and arrow, using penis gourds as their daily dress. It's so they're just constructing a roof on one of their huts, and I'm asking something, and he turns around, and there's his penis gourd. So it's not like it's a daily life choice of clothes, like. And a lot of these things, and it's really that's what I love about it as well. I see the world in a whole different way, and in a very special way. Those people are surprised to see me, and I'm surprised to see them, and that already creates a connection, because we have the same reaction, like, oh yeah, what are you doing here?
What is a penis cloth? Is it just covering the penis or nothing?
It's kind of a hollow tube, a wooden tube, and it actually comes to their chest, and it looks like an erect penis all the way to their chest, and that is just with a string at their waist. It's held up, and that's a penis gourd, they call it. And sometimes it's decorated with a feather on top or something, and it doesn't have anything sexual there. Apparently, that's what I've been reading about, because nobody could explain me, because of the language barrier. But at least the one with the biggest penis gourd has the highest function or something. So it's kind of a hollow tube from a tree, or I don't know exactly what it is. I was in a city in Papua, and there I saw one in a shop, and I bought one to give as a souvenir to my brother. He was very happy with that. So, but besides that, I really don't have too much information about it. But it was just funny to see just suddenly somebody like those people, and I wanted to have a picture with them, and they allowed it. So yeah.
And then, Yella, do you still have all these photos of the skulls, of the Peter skull, all these people? Have you posted this online yet? Have you told these stories yet?
Yeah, I think most. I'm not sure if, because the thing, I've posted it all on Instagram for sure. The thing is, it could be my Instagram. I tried to repost it a couple of times because Instagram is like, oh yeah, this doesn't comply with our policies. There's sexual imaging. It's like, no, it's a penis guard. It's like you wear a pant. It's because it's still covered. There's no naked person in there. But still, yeah, they probably it's like their uh, recognition of images. They're I don't know exactly what's going on there, but at least yeah, it could be. I think it's still there as well with the skulls. I think it's still there. Sometimes, yeah, the automatic algorithm tries. Sometimes I get a warning like, oh yeah, this image will be removed, and like you can say no, but it's okay, and then somebody will look into it. I think I don't know, but at least I have those as well on my website. So it's like on my Instagram or my website. There's images like that, and sometimes the stories are there. Yeah.
That's awesome, Yella. And all these islands where they're hundreds of kilometers away from any other islands, how do they have machetes, clothes? How do they know what a camera is? They have wooden boats. Are there traders that come?
Yeah, there's some trading there. So you'll see there's bigger wooden boats that I've been seeing there in Indonesia that just go from island to island, and then they do trading there. So they maybe buy coconuts or some other things, and then so there's really some trading there. Even with money, just more difficult to be trading with money for a lot of people there because it's not common. The thing is, these bigger wooden boats are sometimes handcrafted as well. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but sometimes they get pretty old. And one time I was rowing, and the weather got a bit tricky in the afternoon. I go to the island, to the beach, to stop, to set up camp. The whole village is standing around me, which is a usual thing, which I don't blame. It just people are curious about what's happening, and something new is happening in town, in the village. But then one of the boats leaves full of coconuts in this harder weather, and I tell my friend, because we were two, and I tell like, yeah, I really have a bad feeling about this. It doesn't seem a good seaworthy boat to be going in these conditions. I think 30 minutes later it's sinking, just right in front of our eyes. I think it's about 500 meters or a kilometer in on the ocean, so from the shore to the ocean. And at that moment, there's the only boat motorized in the near thing. So the whole village comes to me, begging me to go and save those people on the boat. And I have to do that by rowboat in bad weather. And I don't want to do it, but I don't want. So I think there's three people. So the boat is sinking slowly. So suddenly up, and there's at least they had life vests, which I was happy about. So they had these life vests. They're standing on the roof. You could see them wave at the village, like, yeah, help us. And the whole village is like begging me to help. I'm trying to say no, I can't, because it's too dangerous, but I can't explain it too easy in Indonesian, because yeah, I have to worry about my own safety. And I'm like, finally, they convince me, and I'm like, okay, I'll try. At least I've tried them. At least because if I wouldn't, maybe they get too angry at me. So I'm a bit afraid of my own safety in both ways. So I started rowing. Yeah, first of all, somebody wants to join me, and I'm like, no, you never rowed in your life. You're not coming with me. You're extra weight. So I'm rowing on my own to that boat, which is, yeah, I mean, it's a heavy boat that I have, and bad weather, so it takes a while to get there. But by the time I halfway, they found on the same island, on the next village, there was another boat. I think that was the only other boat motorized on the island, or at least big enough. And so I saw that leave, and I was halfway, and then I saw that going to the direction of the boat, and I made a turn. So I turned around to go to the beach, because I knew, yeah, that boat is going there, because I'm not gonna risk my life any longer. It was pretty sketchy, because I was like talking to myself, "Kom maar, Jelle, keep on rowing, hold on." I was scared. I was there alone, and I knew if I have a problem now, nobody can save me, because that boat is in danger. And then, so, but in the end, I got back to the beach, and the other boat that was going to the sunken boat was already there. They towed it to the beach, or at least they towed it to the reef. There it got stuck. The boat went back to land, the other one. And the next day, I wake up, start to row, and they were already trying to repair the boat because the tide was low. The boat was clear, and they were already repairing it to continue their journey, which is crazy to me because it wasn't seaworthy at all when I saw it, and they still kept on using it. I think it's pretty dangerous there, and then so a lot of these islands, they get supplied by bigger boats, but they're not huge. I think maybe, yeah, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 meters, and they have an engine, and they have a big loading space for trading. But I think regularly boats like that, they just vanish.
Wow, so that means they have hammers and nails as resources, and I guess they get that from trading.
Yes, yeah, definitely, yeah. And a lot of their buildings or their cabins, they're like made from local materials, or some of the islands Indonesia has been colonized by the Netherlands, and as well now Indonesia is putting effort as well in building schools even on those remote islands and such. And the Netherlands as well, they've been, yeah, not just building schools. I think their main objective was getting their own resources, but that required infrastructure. And so they made some infrastructure, and some of the islands that I've been on, the infrastructure from the past was completely abandoned and destroyed, and they just lived in huts. And on the other ones, people maintain it. So there you see like concrete structures, and not big ones, just a little cabin or little hut, but at least in concrete. So it's a lot of different things you will see there. Yeah, and the Dutch have built churches as well, because they have some of the islands are Protestant, and I think, and even one part of the island is Protestant, the other one is Muslim. So it's a whole mix of all different cultures and religions.
Every time you've sort of escaped near death, are you religious? Do you feel like someone's looking over you, or do you feel like you just gotten lucky many, many times?
I, for me, most of the time, I think I'm just being lucky, um, to have that. In another way, if it's I like being religious, not really. I don't really have that. So, but on the other hand, I've one of my best friend died when I was 17 years old, and sometimes I still have the feeling like, oh yeah, he's looking over me, and all that stuff, because when I grew up, not in a real religious family, not at all, but I've been baptized, and I've been here in Belgium. A lot of people, especially back in those days, people got baptized and did their, as a Catholic. But it's not that I feel having that religion now. Something I still do actually is, especially in those places, in villages, in remoter places in the world, people ask me, "What's your religion?" In Africa, people ask me a lot. In from all the way from Kazakhstan to Papua, people would ask me, "What's your religion?" And it doesn't matter what the religion is. A lot of people, Muslim people, they would just, and when I say, "Oh, I'm Catholic," because I would say that, they would say, "Oh yeah, but it doesn't matter. You're my brother," So I never encountered any hostility towards me being Catholic and somebody else another religion. It's something we all see on the news. There's a lot of misery going on with religion, and that's what I don't like about it. But when I look at the real life and my own experiences, I never encountered any hostilities towards myself from any other religion I've seen. And that's something important I learned as well. But in that way, yeah, I never had that. But the reason I'm saying I'm Catholic is mainly because I've done it in the past, saying like, yeah, I don't believe in God, and getting a lot of discussions on. And that's something, and not because they don't like me anymore, right? It's mainly because they don't understand that I don't have a religion. Because a lot of people they don't know that, because they are in their own island or their own world, and they see like, yeah, everybody around me believes in God. So it's something, it's a given, you know. It everybody believes in God. And when suddenly somebody tells you, I don't believe in God, it takes hours to explain. And sometimes my language is not strong enough, or I'm just too tired, so I don't want to have any discussion. Sometimes people ask me, are you married? And I'm like, yes, but I'm not married. But I'm just saying it because I don't want to talk, wow, why aren't you why aren't you married? Or you know, like sometimes I'm just too tired after a full day of rowing or cycling, and I'm just saying, just to make it easy going the conversations, and not sometimes I go into it, of course, but yeah.
Yeah. When you go to all these different countries, how can you speak how many languages can you speak? Yeah.
um well, that's lucky to be Belgium. We have already 3 official languages in Belgium. It's a small country, but we have 3 official languages, so it's Dutch, French, and German. My German is not really well, but it's good enough. Then we have to learn English in high school, so that's already 4 that I kind of learn from school. And then always when I go to a country where I'm spending more time, I want to learn the language as well. So Indonesia, I've spent a year of my life in Indonesia. I've been learning Indonesian. For Russia, I've been in Russia, like Ukraine, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan. They're not exactly the same languages, but they're similar. And so I've been learning Russian because I've been spending months in those areas. And then, yeah, Africa, and it was pretty easy because I speak French and English. So that helped me. But there's so many different languages in Africa that it didn't make sense to learn a lot of local languages either. Just once in a while, a Swahili word or something. But it's just a lot of fun because when you go to a village and people around you, they start to stare at you and all that. It's always fun to find a connection, and you start to point at something, and you actually try to ask, what is this? Even when they don't speak any English or French or any language, you start to make a connection, like, oh yeah, this, and then and it's a fun way, especially with the kids, or you make a drawing in the sand, and they're like, oh yeah, what's this in your language, and this is in English, and you learn from each other, and that makes it's just a lot of fun as well. So I always try to learn the local language at least a bit, because then the next time you go somewhere, you can say like, hi, how are you? I'm Jelle from Belgium. I'm going from here to there. Is it okay I sleep here? And when you do that in their language, they're already surprised to see this crazy guy on a bicycle or on a rowboat or any other way. They're already surprised. And once you talk in their language, they're even like amazed. And from then on, you're like, okay, you'll be in good hands, because those people are very sincere in and enthusiastic that you come to visit their place. You It's something else as well. By being on a bike or rowboat or anything, you're not a tourist, you're a visitor of their place, and so they're proud of it and they want to show you that.
Did a lot of the tribes and the islands in Indonesia all speak Indonesian?
Yeah, they all speak Indonesian. Yeah, yeah, that's a surprising thing as well. There was to me, that's something Indonesia has, I think, has put a lot of effort in, is, and probably it's or maybe the Dutch even beforehand. I have no idea where it comes from, but they all speak Indonesian, so it really connects. That it's a very diverse country, and I think, but I'm not sure anymore. But I think that's one of their slogans. It's like unity through diversity, and that's something that was really surprising, and that gave me a lot of yeah. It was very interesting to see as well on all these remote places to see like, oh, they speak Indonesian. Damn, yeah. And they all had their local language, of course.
Yeah, that's so freaking cool. Another thing I wanted to get your thoughts on, and we'll wrap it up soon. It's so cool how you're so talented. You know, like you went through high school and university while like squatting. Like you were on your own. You didn't have resources, but you somehow got an education, became a physiotherapist. Like that is a crazy story in itself. How did you make that happen?
Yeah, it's a crazy story, definitely. How did I make it happen? I think there's a lot of ways. I think one of them is luck. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm white and born in Belgium because, and it's not a lie. I really feel that way because it's just, I know if I would have been born in another country, even the UK or the US, I think for us education is, I think for most countries free, but university, it costs a lot of money. In Belgium, I think when I started my university, it was 450 euros a year, which is, that's it, you know, and then you have to buy some books, but that's it, 450 euros a year. If you can prove you don't have a lot of money, it was 80 euros a year. So, and I got and that's for everybody who can prove that they don't have money. It doesn't matter your grades. If you can prove you don't have the money, it's with your yeah, just something. If you can show that, you get 80 euros a year. And I could buy a student place, which is a small room or a bed and communal showers. It's like a dome thing, but you have your own room, and that's about 130 euros a month when you're in my situation. And then I got about 2,400 euros a year to buy books. And so that meant that if even I always had money left when I bought books with the scholarship. And it's just because I didn't have the money. And that's the only reason. Not because I had good grades or anything. I didn't have to prove myself. Just, you don't have money, we're gonna give you the opportunity. And so I'm really grateful for that. And that's the luck that I had. It doesn't all come down to luck, of course. It's because there's a lot of people. I've been doing motivational talk once in jail in Belgium. I've been talking about my past, about my story, about my childhood, a lot of things that I've been having difficulties in my life when I was younger, about the whole situation with squatting. Some of those guys who are in jail, and it's pretty hard to get in jail in Belgium, maybe too hard, because they're pretty full, the jails, the prisons, and some of those guys that came to me and like, I had a similar life like you, but I'm here in prison. And it was really an eye-opener to me, like how lucky I was, but not just lucky as well, just making the right choices in life. And that's something I'm very thankful for as well, to myself then, to say like, yeah, okay, I am now here not because I'm born in Belgium. I'm here because I made the right choices. I got you. Everybody here gets the opportunity. It's just what you do with it, and it doesn't mean it's always easy. For of course not. But I took those opportunities. I had many of them, and I'm happy I took them. And one of the reasons I think is when I was 17, I had 4 friends who were close to me, and it doesn't have anything to do with the squatting, but just one, they died. They got, one of them got killed in a hit and run accident. So he was walking home, a car hit him, and then he died, and the car fled. So we don't know who was it. Another friend, he killed himself, and somebody died from cancer, all in my age group, close friends. And so it made me, so I lost everything in my life, physically then, and I was squatting. I didn't have anything, just had a backpack, and I had to find a way. And then those friends died, and I was convinced I wasn't gonna live that long. I knew like in 10 years I'm gonna die. at least in within those 10 years, I'm gonna die. And so I was in those squads with the right people, luckily not junks, people who wanted to do something with their lives. And so those people they were older than me, they kind of tried to protect me, they tried to keep me away from drugs, which was successful. I never was into drugs. And all the things combined, I thought like, yeah, in 10 years I'm not gonna live anymore. So I want to make choices now in my life that in 10 years, if the moment I die, I want to look back and think I had a good life, I made the right decision. And that's how I still try to live now at the moment. And I always do. when I so after 3 years of squatting, I got a job, I started to work. I thought like, yeah, maybe in 10 years, um, because I heard people talking about, I went, maybe I should have studied in my life, or I regret not have tried to so hard for studying and all that stuff. So I'm like, oh, maybe I should try to go for university. And because I'm in Belgium, I can't. So I think like, yeah, because I don't want to be in 10 years thinking maybe I should have done something different with my life. So let's do it. So I did it. And then at university, which was hard for me because I didn't have the right science background, at least not from the years, the past years. And so I studied every day. We had the whole day of class. I got home 1 hour, 2 hours. I was behind the books. And I did that every day the first year because I know I have one chance. And if I don't succeed in that first year, yeah, it's finished. I can't keep on living like that, knowing that maybe I will make it. I have to be sure. And so I studied every day. And because if I study every day very hard, and that's something I still do today, it's like going full for something. If I do this every day now, I fail, I'm not smart enough, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong I did. It's not gonna be nice, it's gonna be a disappointment, but at least I don't have to be in 10 years thinking, oh, I should have tried harder. I regret not having tried or having tried harder. No, I've tried hard. So there's these regrets, I will prevent them. But if I in best case I succeed, and that happened. But if I fail, there's nothing wrong with that either. And that's how I actually got back on my feet as well. Because I knew that even if I fail, I won't have those regrets in 10 years. Because I know I've tried, and I've tried very hard. And that's the thing with all my expeditions now as well. I prepare, and everything has to be right. And then I go 100% for it. And if I fail, then yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody fails. It's something we have to do, and we have to learn from it.
I love that. Do you still communicate with any of the fellow squatters, the older ones that looked out for you? Are any of them still alive? Where are they now?
Yeah, sadly, some of them that I know that they passed away already. But some of them I communicate with. Yeah, definitely. And one of them, I know one of them, and that's actually been always a bit like of an elder brother. He was previously addicted to drugs, but he got away from it, and then he learned from it. And I never knew him as being addicted to drugs. I just knew him being sober. So he was kind of my safeguard in that, because my whole world fell apart. I think I was very vulnerable to all that stuff. And he was kind of my older brother. And if I would come back to the squad with something like that, he would smack me in the face and say, no, you're not gonna do that. So he gave me I learned from his lessons. It's something we can all do sometimes, learn from other lessons. It's sometimes we have to make our own mistakes, sometimes we can learn from somebody else's. And so he that I was really happy with that, and he became a social worker in the end. So he went to college, and he became a social worker just a couple of years ago even. And then one of the other ones, I know he now has a business doing fire shows, and that he makes a living out of it. So he's doing all these fire shows around Europe, for cities, for big events. He's doing all these fire shows. He was already doing juggling with fire, and sometimes being on the street asking money to people by doing these little tricks. and now he's making a living out of it, which is beautiful, you know. So yeah, there's a lot of special things you see and meet there, and it's really cool. Yeah.
It's like a movie of like a few kids grew up on the streets and now everyone's doing very interesting things.
Yeah, yeah, and then it's pretty fun actually too, and I'm really proud of seeing those people. They have kids, and then they have their house, and then yeah, they're having a good life.
I have one physio question I wanted to ask you. You hear people talk about how marathon runners have shorter lifespans because you're just pushing your body to the limit. Is there any truth to that, or is it okay to strain your body and that would actually help you live longer?
Well, scientifically, so being a physiotherapist, I can't say that because I haven't done any research in the literature to know if they would. It's something that I'll have to find out on the scientific platforms to see, like, oh yeah, are marathon runners having a shorter lifespan, and even why. But to me, myself being an adventurer and a physiotherapist, I know I'm doing bad things to my body sometimes, for sure. I know. It's like elite sports, that's something they say as well. It's not good for your body. I agree to a certain extent. And I have to elaborate on that because it's just something on an expedition, I push my body to its complete limit sometimes. And it's not healthy. I agree with that. It's something bad. But it's just a fraction of the whole year that I'm doing that. The whole year round, I'm taking very good care of my body. I'm training, I'm eating healthy. I drink alcohol, but not a lot, you know. It's just sometimes a beer and that's it. I'm not getting drunk every week. So I'm really taking care of myself. So you could say that maybe a couple of weeks in a year, it's bad. Or for marathon runners, if somebody runs a marathon a year, but the whole year round, they're really taking care of their body. I think it's very healthy. So the net result in something like that, and for me as well, my net result for my body is highly positive. If I would be not doing this, maybe I would not move that much, and sitting all day is a lot more unhealthy than anything else. So physical activity is one of the most important things we could do for our body. And so yeah, I'm risking my life sometimes. Definitely, I know that. I'm aware of that. If I fall off a mountain, I could be killed. It's a reality, and I'm taking that risk within certain limits. Definitely, I'm not a big risk taker. It's the same when I drive my car. I don't exceed the speed limits. I don't drink. I use a seatbelt. All those stuff help me stay safe. And it's the same in the mountain. There's certain rules you have to respect. So yeah, I would say certain aspects of it are unhealthy, but in the long term, I think I'm having a healthy lifestyle. Yeah.
I love it, yeah. Last two questions we always wrap up the interviews with. One, any recent discoveries that you've been implementing to your life?
Um, Recent discoveries that I have to. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One of it, and that's maybe something that it's quite recent, but not extremely recent, is that, like I say, I'm doing a lot of sports, doing a lot of physical activity. One of the things is, now a couple of things come up. One of the things is I made a job out of my hobby, which I had to discover that now it became my job. I have to take a holiday sometimes. I have to take a break from it. And it sounds strange because sometimes people say as well, like, oh yeah, I'm going on a holiday, I'm going on vacation. And it's like, yeah, but aren't you traveling the whole time? Yeah, but that's my job now. And so being in that the whole time, it's tiring. So sometimes I just have to say, okay, now I'm just gonna take off. I'm just gonna take a vacation and maybe do some sports, but not extreme. Just go running for 30 minutes and do something, but relax and do something I wanna do, and have some luxury and comfort. That's something that I had to learn, because otherwise, I think from the past expedition, definitely I would go in a burnout if I would continue pushing it. And it's really strange. It's like an adventure burnout, but I think anybody can get it. And I felt extremely exhausted after the past expedition because I've been pushing my limits very hard. And I feel good now, but that's because I'm taking this vacation in a way. Yeah.
Very cool. I love that, yeah. And the last question is, I guess, besides work, now that you've made your hobby your work, any personal goals or focus over the next 6 months?
Um, in the next 6 months, my personal goals, yeah, first of all, it's recovering from the past expedition, and actually just enjoying. And I just moved in with my girlfriend, who has 2 kids, and just finding a home, like finding calm, ease, home, and stability. Yeah, I would say that's kind of a personal thing that I have for myself, because the last 11 years have been a big roller coaster, and now I have 2 mountains left, which seems very fair to do. Still a big trip, a big challenge, but at least now I feel like the balance is turning into a different way, and yeah, doing something like that.
How did you go about sort of meeting a girlfriend, given that you're traveling all the time and you're always away?
Well, yeah, I've like I said, I'm doing it in stages, and the times I'm preparing, I'm in Belgium, um, and so we met, and she's like, yeah, I've got 2 kids, and she also has her life in that way, that so they're not my personal, and like my own blood, let's say, because for me, I never had the ambitions of making my own children. Um, but I love taking care of others. So yeah, in that way, it's a very good combination to me and to her, I think.
Yeah, that's a perfect match. Which continent, which mountain was your last mountain? And what made it so difficult? What was the most hardest part about it that made you feel close to burnout?
Well, so the last mountain was Denali, so the highest mountain of North America, and it's based in Alaska. And the last trip was a couple of months. That's the last stage of the human powered to the mountain was that I cycled from Seattle to Alaska, and that was in winter. I was already 2 years on the whole expedition, like I said, in stages, but like sailing across the ocean, crossing all Central America, the United States, and so it kind of weighs in on you. But then the real challenge came, which meant going from Seattle to Alaska in winter. The reason being is I had to be at the right time at the mountain. So you have to take care of the seasons. And then I was cycling sometimes for, I think the longest stretch was about 8 days without seeing anyone in winter, in like minus 40 degrees Celsius temperature sometimes. And I was just getting sick of it, of being inside of my head the whole time. Yeah, you're just having a conversation only with yourself. There's no phone reception. You're just talking to yourself, and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it, but after a while, you're just sick of it, and being in that cold, being uncomfortable the whole time. Like I said, like, oh yeah, sometimes appreciate pushing a button, there's light coming, turning a knob, there's water coming out. But there I actually appreciated the fact that maybe even for a minute or 2 minutes, I could be comfortable. That was something I was being thankful for. And that was the lowest degree of like, oh yeah, like, oh, I'm thankful to have water and food and all that stuff. No, I was thankful to just feeling comfortable. The moment I was getting out of my sleeping bag, between going out of it and in there, I barely got comfortable. There was always something cold. And if I was comfortable, it was maybe for 1 minute maximum. because it's so cold. You need to take care of, like, oh, my feet are getting cold, my hands, my yeah, there's so much stuff. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to wear mittens to pitch your tent, you have to, so if you want to make food or water, you have to melt snow, you do have to do it with gloves or mittens, so everything takes a lot more effort. And so just sitting somewhere and drinking a coffee was not comfortable. And that is why I think this was hard, because you just couldn't sit somewhere and read a book and be comfortable. It's or even sitting down, it's like it's cold, everything's cold, everything's frozen. If I eat something during the daytime, when it's minus 40 degrees Celsius or even minus 20 degrees Celsius, if you put something in your mouth, it's got the same temperature. It's cold. So imagine eating the whole day, everything out of your freezer. Even here, I wouldn't be happy about it. Um, and so that is like making a sandwich. Like sometimes I made sandwiches for a couple of days, because when I was at some people's place, and then I knew for a couple of days I won't see anybody, or there won't be anything, I couldn't sleep inside. Everything's frozen, so you have to break it off, try not to break a tooth, let it melt in your mouth, chew it, and then digest it. And that's, yeah, even making food in these temperatures, I make food, you have to hurry, you have to eat it fast, because otherwise it's frozen. You make warm food, you heat up water. I remember, like, people sometimes ask, oh yeah, how does it feel to be in minus 40? Like, yeah, imagine making hot water for tea or coffee, or I just rinse something, I throw it in the air, and by the time it's coming down, it's snow. And so that means if you make food and you don't eat it fast enough, it's frozen. So it's and that makes it hard, because you're always struggling and you're never comfortable for more than 1 minute. And this is a big mental challenge, a big mental toll. Your body starts to break down, and you are just, and that's being alone, like you're alone, you're just out there. Once on the mountain, I was with a climbing partner, but by then I was already exhausted and I was tired, and we were still able to climb the mountain, but it wasn't easy at all.
What a crazy story. Yeah, I'm so glad I've been able to sort of get you at the right time, because you're right, it's going to be hard to catch you. You're always on and then you have a small window. So I'm glad we're able to sort of get this in. Where can people follow you and get more of you?
Yeah, it's yeah, like my Instagram or Facebook I'm using as well, or my website, and it's all just Jelle Veyt, and it's like JelleVeyt. And yeah, if people Google that or just go to Instagram, they'll find me there. Or jellevet.be is my website, which I'm updating at the moment and try to update as much as possible. It's a lot of work sometimes, so I have to write some stories and I have to do that.
Thank you so much, Yella. I really appreciate your time. I love how humble you are. You're so content. We could literally talk for hours and hours. You just have so much wisdom, and I know that you have so many stories, and we've literally just at the tip of the iceberg. And you have great memory. You're so patient and calm. So I really appreciate you having you on today.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Thank you guys. If you've made it this far into the episode, hopefully you guys got some value. Please let me know your thoughts of the episode, and I'll see you guys next week on another episode. Peace.
Thank you so much, Yella. I know we
Yeah, you're
went
welcome.
all the time. This is really fun. You knocked out all the questions I had. And yeah, I'm very excited for this episode.
Okay, nice. Yeah, me too. Yeah, let me know when it's out, and yeah,
I will, I will. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful week.
thanks.
Thank you, Yella. Have a beautiful day.
Okay, bye bye. Yeah, you too.